Hello and welcome to the Customer Journey Best Practice webinar from CX Omni. Today we will
So,
present
thank you,
you the
Mark.
second part with Joachim Thurm from Effectly. Introduction, Customer Journey Mapping and Touchpoint Management in 6 steps. Joachim will present himself in a minute. As you may know, is CX Omni one of the leading software as a service tool to visualize customer journeys. With this webinar series, we are offering practical examples presented by experts. During the webinar, you have access to the chat. I think you have seen this, and some of you were at the last webinar there. It's on the right corner, and you can write us and your questions during the webinar. I think Joachim will see this and answer during the webinar. At the end of the presentation, we have a little questionnaire. It would be grateful if you could fill it out. That's the end of my short introduction. Do you have any questions to the stage? No? I wish you an exciting webinar and would hand over to Joachim. Welcome to Joachim. It's over to you. We can't see your screen.
So, thank you, Marlis, and I'm happy to be here. And thank you very much to inviting me to this second session of how to map a customer journey of the 3 of those sessions. So, last Wednesday we did have the first one. Today we have the second one, and next week we have the third one. So, I'm happy to see you all guys here. We have lots of people here I can see today. So please use the chat box below to the right, and please enter your name and also where you are in the world, so I can see you. So please use the chat box down below so that I can see your name and where you are. Okay, hi Smaro, and hi Alexander from Germany. Welcome to this webinar. Perfect, thank you. And we have Manuel here from Nuremberg and Tatine from Brazil. Oh, welcome Tatine from Brazil, exciting. I love the weather in Brazil right now. And short story, my youngest daughter went from the Olympics and she was stunned by Brazil. So a nice country and nice Olympics in Brazil. Okay, thanks. Let's get started then. I think we have, do you see my screen now? Yes, you do. Okay.
We can't see your screen.
Okay, let's hit play then.
At the moment,
Okay, give me some second here. I think there was a small.
between I
Yeah.
can tell you.
Yeah.
And the next days we are finished the information from the last webinar. Oh no, we can see your screen, Joachim. So,
Perfect. Perfect.
okay.
Okay, this was the first slide I also have from the first webinar, and of course we are talking about customer journey and mapping today. So today is going to be around the mapping process, and let's zoom out a bit then. Today, you know, customer experience is at the forefront of all companies' strategy across tons of industries worldwide. Customer journey mapping is universal, sees as an ideal starting point to understand your business from your customer's perspective. And that's the important thing here. And collect voice of the customer, collect other evidence, and put it all in a place and align the organization around these insights with the purpose to get the customer to pay more, stay longer, and recommend your brand to families and friends. So the headline for today's webinar is the introduction to customer journey mapping and touchpoint management in 6 or maybe 7 steps. You will see, and that's a cliffhanger. So let's take it away then. Some second about me. My name is Joachim Thörn, and I am the co-founder of Effectly. And you can also see my wife to the left on that image, and also our low energy house that we built, the first one in the Nordics in Sweden 8 years ago. It was a fantastic project and a very tough project. You can see it on my face maybe. Okay, my background then. I went in HU Chicago, and I also the co-founder with Trim and co-founded Effectly in 2012. My core values are: I like to be authentic, I like to innovate, and I like to inspire other peoples. So, shortly about Effectly's framework for customer experience in outzoomed way. Our 7 disciplines is based on 20 years of research that we have gathered and put together. How do you create more engaged employees and customers? So if you have that insight, you need to fulfill all those 7 disciplines. And the first one, that you have to build a customer-centric culture, or even a customer-obsessed culture. Customer obsessed, you need to have that in everything you do in your company. You have to have the customer experience strategy embedded in all other strategies, and also the insights and the understanding, the voice of the customer, the voice of the employee, the real-time insights that you get from customer stories and behaviors. You have to do the journey maps and improvement based on current state and also the particular journey that you want it to be. You also need to have the right metrics and the measurement and to get the right ROI out of your projects. You need to have an organization that embrace and adopt and have accountability for everything around customers. And you also need to have managers and employees that could see the holistic approach and how you put everything together. So that was shortly around Effectly and our 7 disciplines, and we also have the CX 360 Hub, our SaaS platform for executing on voice of the customer and voice of the employee, and also to gather insight for custom journey mapping and to spread the journey maps around your organization. So it was shortly around Effectly, and back to the customer journey then. You know, all your potential customers and existing customers are on a journey. To understand each customer's experience and feelings throughout your brand is central and essential. Your touch points normally is plus 100, and you can imagine what to work on those touch points so that you can gather more positive feelings about your brand, and how you can online versus offline also improve the customer experience in your touch points, an experience that drives the customer to pay more for your product and services, to stay longer with you, and to recommend you brand to families and friends. And guys, this is a nice view from Stockholm. So next time you come to Stockholm, you can stay and live on that ferry, the white ferry you can see on that image. A pretty nice place to be when you're in Stockholm. Okay, my first question here, what is a customer journey map? And what is customer journey mapping? Let's dig into this right now. A customer journey map is a pictorial representation of the customer's expectations, experiences, and reflections, as with several steps and touch points develops over time when customers are looking for, buy and use a product or consume a service. But you can also put it like this. The sum of the experience a customer has when interacting with a company, a brand, the overall customer experience, where you have expectations, emotion, and experiences. That's a customer journey map in text. Okay, let's zoom out a bit then, how do a customer journey relates to the ecosystem of the customer experience? Because this is an ecosystem, and I think the first thing you have to understand, ecosystem is depending on so lots of touch points and channels and so on. So we need to understand that, and we also need to understand the customer lifetime cycle. And I want to talk about the ecosystem and the customer lifetime cycle as this circular model here, because somewhere, where do the journey starts? In our world, the journey starts when the customer is searching and discover for a need, a product, or a service. The next phase, the customers evaluate the customer's way of doing this typical product or typical service, and the customer is buying the product or service. And then the customer get access to the service. That's pretty cool, to get access to your new iPhone or your new online service or something like that. And then you start using your product, you start using your iPhone, you start using your online services. And the time flies, and you also need some support. And the support phase is also one of the moment of truth that we are talking about, because between the buying phase and the get support phase, there is lots of interactions, and there is a possibility here, of course, for a new commitment. I want to upgrade to iPhone 7, and if all my journey from the evaluate phase to the buying phase to the get access phase to the using phase and get support phase is 100%. I will buy a new iPhone 7. But there is also a possibility that I leave for the Google Nexus, for example, because something went really wrong when I used the phone or when I did get in touch to get my support. So I think you are with me here. This is the 7 or 6 steps for the customer life cycle. But the ecosystem then, if we take the layers of the ecosystem here, what is visible to customers, employees? Yes, you have sales, you have projects, you have support, you have the aftermarket, and also you have partners, maybe temporary store personnel in your retail stores. You have other personnel from parcel deliveries. You have outsourced call centers maybe, and you have contracted technicians to help the customer with the TV or something like that. But you also have the behind the scenes, where you have your employees working with operation, with finance, with marketing, legal, IT, purchase, etc., etc. And you also have your internal partners around tech suppliers and agencies for everything, and also lots of consultants, and also you work with some recruitment agencies. And those are also directly connected or indirectly connected to the ecosystem here. And then you have 3 phases, and we are calling those phases marketing, sales ready. What you need to be really good at, the phase 1, you need to be on the spot where the customer is searching and discover your products and evaluate them. And you have also get into the second phase with delivering in the light and operational excellence. So this is the ecosystem of the customer experience that we want to use the customer journey map to really get into details and dig deep and roll up the sleeves together. And then when I say together, I mean to gather all the stakeholders around this customer experience ecosystem. So let's see what we have more. What kind of steps and components should the customer journey maps include? Map or maps? Because you can have one map, one generic map, but you can also have lots and lots of maps based on different personas and different journeys. So first thing first, you need to gather all the stakeholders. And what do I mean by that? I mean, right now if you take that circular customer experience ecosystem and the customer lifetime process, and we go from a circle to this kind of journey where we have the search and discover, evaluate, buy, get assess, and get support, and the loyalty and new commitment phase. There are lots of organizational silos today. Unfortunately, we have those silos. And one of my colleagues always said, we have to tear down the silos. We have to tear down the silos. And I say, no, we can't tear down the silos, because those silos are there for a reason because we have grown the company and there are lots of departments. So let's gather the marketing team, the sales team, the account management team. Let's gather the contact center team and the product owners. And those are the stakeholders for a customer journey mapping workshop. To say hello to each other and to roll up the sleeves and to start working together. So first of all, gather the team, gather the stakeholders around the workshop for customer journey mapping, so that you have representation in all the customer's journey and life cycle. Okay, then we will dig down into the 6/7 step process for customer journey mapping and how that one look like. So first of all, you have to review existing goals, the company's and the organization's goals to take into the workshop. So this is kind of research before the workshop. So review existing goals from all stakeholders so that you have that kind of insight with you when you enter the workshop. The second step is also to gather all customer insight and statistics that you have. Customer insights from voice over customer program, marketing reviews, marketing research, etc., etc. Everything around customer insights. Maybe you also have conduct lots of interviews, deep interviews based on those personas that you want to do the journey mapping with. The third step is to create an empathy map. An empathy map is a tool, a pretty simple tool to get more into that persona and to really show your empathy for that persona. I will show you the empathy map after this slide so that you can start to use it by yourself. Okay, the fourth step then though, to identify channels and touch points. And channels is where the customer is interacting with you, and touch points is a verb, what the customer is doing, something that the customer is doing in the life cycle. So the first 4 steps in the journey mapping process is pretty much to gather insight and also get a kind of current state. Let's jump to number 5. Now when you have your goals, your insights, your empathy and the insight and understanding about the customer, you have the channels, you have the touch points, what the customer do in the life cycle and trying to do and accomplish, you can start to create and organize new ideas. Because the first 4 steps is about current state. So when you start to sketch out the pain points and the delights and the moment of truth, etc., then you also can start to draw a new map and to organize all new ideas that you have. When you have done that, start to fine-tune and fine-tune and fine-tune again and digitize, because when you are in that mode, you need also to create a opportunity to spread this updated map in your organization, and therefore you can forget everything about PowerPoints and PDFs and everything like that. You need to digitize the map in the cloud, and from there the 7th step, to share the map in your organization, a map that is always up to date and could be shareable in all your organization and also outside your organization. You know, those kind of creative agencies and consultant and other kind of stakeholders that you are working with, it's pretty much for them you also could start to share the map. So this was the 6/7 step for customer journey mapping. So I want you to write in the chat box right now, do you see any other steps from your point of view? Please write in the chat box down to the right. Do you see any other steps that you are using in your organization regarding customer journey mapping? Okay, thank you. Mallis, do you see any comments here, Mallis?
Yes.
Correct. So thank you for these insights and for your comments here. So this was the 7 steps, but we also have the components for customer journey mapping. So if we dig into the components here, what kind of components do we need to bring into the workshop for customer journey mapping? First of all, I want to take a second to talk about empathy maps. And the empathy maps is that tool that you and your team are using to really dig into that persona. So what are the customer, in this case, the purchase manager, Camilla, think and feel? What really matters for her? Do she have a kind of worries or aspirations or something like that? What do Camilla hear? What are friends saying about the journey? What are the boss saying? What kind of influences are saying? And what does Camilla see? The environment, friends, what the market offers, etc. And what is Camilla saying and doing? What kind of attitude do Camilla has in the public? What kind of appearance and behaviors towards others? And from there also understand Camilla's pain. What kind of fears and frustration and obstacles do Camilla has? And if we have a solution for those pains, what kind of gains do we see in front of us? Wants and needs and measure of success. So this pretty simple tool is a way in the workshop for customer journey mapping that you can use to really get into, in this case, Camilla, the purchasing manager, and also Henrik, the Swedish environmental manager that we are working with right now. So this is the empathy map with 2 personas to really get in under the skin on those personas, because this is pretty important when you're doing the job in your workshop. Okay, let's head into what kind of components we are talking about. What kind of components do we need in the customer journey mapping? First of all, Camilla and Henrik needs to be there. The personas. Who makes the trip normally? And the persona is of course a semi-fictional person who represents a customer segment and illustrates the needs, goals and thoughts, feelings and opinions, and also the expectation and pain point of the user. So this kind of personas do various trips, and we need to do one journey mapping for each persona, of course. We also need a timeline, because a customer journey map is a timeline, because if we think back to the ecosystem and the customer experience life cycle, you have a timeline. So in this case, we have 1st of May to June 30th. And you also need emotions. Think about the insight and the voice of the customer program. We need emotions from the highs and lows, showing frustration, anxiety, happiness, etc. We also need touch points. And touch point was the verb. What is the customer trying to do? So touch point is what the customer are trying to do. And we need channels. Where do customers do these things? On Google search, in social media, marketing, of course, social networks and physical social networks, the e-commerce thing, PR thing, the store or in-store, or the contact center. There could be various of channels here. And the 6th thing is the moment of truth. Where do we have the moment of truth in your organization and in the customer journey? So based on the insights that you have gathered and the research you have done before, the personas is important, the timeline for that journey, emotions from the journey and every touch point, what who the customer is doing, the channels, and the moment of truth. So now you can start. And now you can start with map all the channels and touch points based on the customer life cycle, of course. And normally you work with very analog, you work with those kind of sticky notes, and you are working very hard to produce the map on a whiteboard, on a wall or something. And in Foresight you have this kind of ecosystem also again, where you have the persona to the left. You can see Henrik there. In his face, search and discover, what kind of touch point do he are trying to do then. In the evaluation phase, what he are doing then. In the buying phase, the get access phase, and on the top you have digital touch points, and on the bottom you have physical touch points, and so on. And normally there are plus 100 touch points in an organization, so there is a really hard job to gather all touch points. But it is pretty easy when you have done the empathy map and when you have gathered all the stakeholders together and you are working side by side together and shoulder by shoulder, and to map those touch points is pretty easy. Okay, yeah, on the map you also have the feelings, of course, and you have the word of mouth, of course. And 5 years ago, Google started to say that there are four moments of truth. There is the zero moment of truth also, and the zero moment of truth is kind of in the search and discover phase. How would your brand look like when the persona, in this case Henrik, is out there and trying to search for a product or a service? So there's the first moment of truth, what Google calls zero moment of truth, or CMOT. So that one you can remember to your next workshop. CMOT, the zero moment of truth, that starts when Henrik's starting to search and discover for products and services. Okay, let's get into some value of customer journey mapping. What kind of values do we have here? Let's start with the organizational value. It's creating a unified view where there also is objectivity here, and you can see the holistic picture together. You also, when you gather all the stakeholders, see one's role in this process, because this is not a project. Custom journey mapping is a process. Of course, increase cooperations when you connecting silos together and roll up the sleeves and starting to work together. Also the potential for development and how to prioritize those kind of development based on project, price, value, etc. And of course, it's fun to work. It's pretty much fun to work together for a half day or a whole day together. And especially when you have lots of journeys and personas, this kind of work will continue every month and every quarter, of course. So it's fun to work and to meet new people. Okay, let's talk about the quantifiable value of customer journey mapping. What do we see in front of us? What kind of quantifiable value can we put out of our customer journey mapping processes? We are looking about 7 areas here, and I will talk a little bit about them. When you do the journey mapping, you can start to optimize channels, of course. So channels that are not delivering value to the customer, you can take down, of course. also replace or delete ineffective touch points that are not working well. You can start to design for word of mouth because you want your customers to recommend you and to recommend your product or services. So start to design for that directly. You can also, based on the personas, starting to do segmenting of emotional experience throughout also the business departments. And that's pretty important so that you get more into details and to be really effective with your communication with the customer. And the fifth one is, of course, the organization's ownership and responsibility for the customer journey starting to grow, of course. And of course, when you map the journey, you also get into details. Where do you need to listen? Where do you need to gather the voice of the customer so that you can gather feedback and to start to take action on those insights? And the last one, of course, employee satisfaction index will rise. The customer centricity increases here, and you know, it's pretty fun and exciting to work with, help customers and to achieve more happier customers, and that's employee satisfaction index will go up. Okay, 7 quantifiable areas of customer journey mapping. Let's head over to what's different between process mapping versus journey mapping. I think all of you guys have been done through the process mapping, the left side. The process mapping is a kind of inside-out perspective. You have worked with process map, and the difference here from our perspective is, yeah, process mapping is about the company. Journey mapping is about the customer. Process mapping is about operational efficiency. And journey mapping is about customer experience and operational efficiency. Process mapping is often specific departments and roles. When you do the journey mapping, as I have said, it's cross-functional, it's teams. You get to know and get the same view from the whole company for the customer experience and the ecosystem. And process mapping is most about consistency, of course. And when you talk about journey mapping, we are talking about pain points and emotions and how you really win your customers' hearts for real. So that was the process mapping versus journey mapping. Let's get into what customer journey maps are not. I like to speak forward, not backwards, but in this case I also want to talk about what customer journey maps are not, and that could, I explain like this. A customer journey map is not designed from the company's point of view or perspective. That's really important. And it's also not your organizational internal processes and procedures. And the third one, it's not a project or a single effort, because customer journey mapping is a process that starts and you have to roll up the sleeve and start to work over time. It's not the end, of course, it's the beginning, because it needs to develop ongoing actions over time. And normally maybe you meet up once a quarter with your stakeholders and do new maps, and maybe also your product owner want to develop new products. And to develop new products, a journey map could be a super thing to have when you want to introduce new product or services to the market. And the journey map are not only for mapping customer experience, because you can also map the employee experience. Because today how you treat employees will be the bottom line how you treat customers. So if you really want loyal customers, you need to start from the inside and out, of course, with how you treat your employees and the employee experience. Yes, let's dig into some other guidelines for making your journey maps here. Some do's and don'ts here, and from my perspective, let's have focus, have a clear message and communicate the critical, synthesized information here. It's super important. And also remain grounded, stay on with your 2 feet on the ground, and that you are connected to both research and product goal to inspire action, because action is the most important thing here. And also the scope. You have to set goals and prioritize before and during the mapping. So there is a goal. What kind of goals do you have with your project and process for journey mapping? And some don'ts also here. Don't lose sight of the story, because the layer of information could just be too much, but you have to stay on sight of the story and don't overgeneralize your research here. People, of course, don't lose sight of people, and don't get lost in the weeds and map in a silo. And as I said, it's not about breaking silos, it's about connecting silos. So ensure that you have your key players with you in the process. And the third one for don'ts, it's forget about the scope. So of course, prioritization will not happen if you don't do it. So you have to get back to the scope and your goals and do the prioritization and roll out the sleeves and get dirty and start to do development from the customer's perspective. Okay, sorry for that. Let's get to the next picture. Pressed the wrong button. Sorry for that. Okay, some questions to ask before you start. Pretty much important questions to ask before you start. What do we intend to design for? What do we intend to design for? Kind of map type, what kind of focus, what is the timeline? And you need to focus on 1 or 2 things. Maybe one of your marketing guys are coming with the internal process for marketing and sales, etc., etc. This is our thing about how we handle stranger visitors, leads, customers, and so on. And as I say before, the customer journey mapping is not an internal process mapping. So be sure that you have focus on the goals. In this case, we have focus on users and customer goals, and user and customer goals. And also maybe cross touchpoint experience and cross channel experience. And of course, we had focus to design for our personas, not our internal processes. That is something else that often could start after this journey mapping and ideas around journey mapping. And the second question that we also want to have an answer on, what are we hoping to achieve? You need to map up the scope, the story, and maybe you start to really understanding the current state and to really dig deep into the current state of the journey map. And also how you can develop a customer-centric or customer-obsessed roadmap, and how you will and can develop innovative new offerings around your services or products. I think that was the last question you can ask in a journey mapping project. Now it's time for the Q&A, and the Q&A is questions and answers from and to this webinar. So